A home invasion that ends up being a lot more than just your everyday home invasion. Today we will be discussing why you should read The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here. If this is your first time here, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Let me tell you a little bit about what's coming in the next week and a half or so. It's going to be a lot about this book. You are watching the Why You Should Read. This is going to be non-spoilers. I'm just going to kind of give my general overall thoughts. This is not a review. This falls into that weird kind of thing where like I don't really want to review it, and this is going to talk about why you should read it. This was adapted into a movie, so we will also look at that a little bit later, probably at the beginning of next week. And then I have already recorded it. I am just editing it at this point. The raw footage was over an hour of me like really diving into like what I think this book is trying to get at. So I say all that to say that I love this book. I don't think there's a way for me to review this book. Like I love it. I really love what it's doing. I think Paul Tremblay is kind of a master at deconstructing kind of regular horror tropes, so to speak. He doesn't always do it, but when he does it like phenomenally. He's one of my favorite like writers working right now, especially within the horror genre, which I love. And I'm trying on the channel to make a balance between fantasy and horror because there are two genres that like I love the most. I'm not the biggest science fiction fan. I know those fantasy and science fiction kind of go hand in hand with a lot of people. A lot of channels that I follow specifically, they kind of look at science fiction and fantasy as kind of like one thing, and that's kind of what they talk about. For me, I am very much I would gladly substitute science fiction for horror. Horror is my favorite genre apart from fantasy. I love them both very, very much. And so yeah, I want to at least keep a fair balance. This is part of that. So obviously after we get through some of this discussion, the fantasy stuff will be coming. And so yeah, I want to, as the channel progresses, I just want to keep a fair balance. So hopefully if you are here because you like fantasy and you have heard some of my fantasy stuff or my historical fiction stuff, this will convince you to check out some horror books as well. That was enough rambling. Let's talk about why you should read The Cabin at the End of the World. Let's get into it. Without spoiling anything, here is a brief plot synopsis. And I'm going to reveal something that maybe is a spoiler. It's not revealed on the back of the book. But I do think it is important to sell it by revealing this. And I think it's revealed like 80 pages in. Something like it's revealed before the 100-page mark, which I've said I think is fine to reveal. If you don't want to know anything about the book, I guess just go pick it up and read it. But here's essentially the sell. This family, 2 men and their adopted daughter, are going to a cabin for a getaway. They are approached by 4 people in the woods, 2 men, 2 women. They all have these kind of weird makeshift weapons. And then eventually they make their way into the cabin. They tie them into chairs and they are going to try to force them to make a decision. And this decision does not just impact this family, it impacts the whole world. And that decision is they have to willingly sacrifice one of their own to stop the apocalypse from happening. And then the story kind of goes from there. Honestly, for me, that was enough for the why you should read. Like, that's an amazing premise. I love that idea. But there's so much more going on here. It is a book about like not giving into fear, not letting fear run your life, and like raising children in a time of uncertainty. This book does a lot with shifting narrators. It shifts perspectives a lot. I think Paul Tremblay has a command over language and how he uses his prose to convey certain things. He shifts almost seamlessly from one person's POV to another, and then there are points in the novel where he uses like like first person plural tense, which I have never seen used before. So he says like we do this and we, and it's just a way to really like embed you into the narrative and a way to embed you into these characters. So because when it says we, like it is implicating you, the reader, as well. And so I think like he has such a control of his craft, especially in this book, that I think like if you just love good prose, you should read this book. I will say, like, that there is a brutality that exists in this book. There is a like very almost like bordering on nihilistic through line through the book about like, you know, maybe the world like doesn't deserve to go on if this is the kind of choice that has to be made. And there's a lot of things for you to wrestle with, I think, is what I'm coming down on, like, from this book, is that I read this book in November of last year. I've read it twice. I mean, I reread it to, like, do the big video, but, like, it's a book that I haven't, like, stopped thinking about. And I think there's so much in here to dissect and to take out that even an hour-long video that I have recorded, I don't think really does the whole thing. The novel really plays with like this idea that, well, is it a lie? Is the apocalypse really coming? Or is this teetering on hate crime? Like, was a gay couple targeted by these individuals? And I think it is an interesting question. It's explored in very interesting ways. There's a lot of evidence on both sides of this equation that I think makes for a very compelling read. It's left there's an ambiguity like around all of the events, around all these perspectives, and you know, there's some things that get set up that maybe you can't take everything that's being said at face value. And I really love books that kind of give you that ambiguity. I like books where like the question is more important than the answer, and I think that is kind of what we are dealing with here. Or I guess more like how you would answer that question reveals more than the answer. And I think ultimately that's what this book is doing. This book is it has a way of like hooking you in. It has a way of sinking you into the minds of these characters, into this cabin that they are all sharing a space in, and it forces you to become an active participant. It forces you, as you are reading, to weigh the evidence, kind of figuring out what side of this line you kind of fall on, and then like at the end you're left to make the choice. You're left to be like, well, did they or did they not? And I think that is what is the most compelling part of this. And this is ultimately why I think you should read it. I think there's a lot of heavy themes. There's a lot of this is certainly not for everybody, right? There's a lot of like heaviness to it. There's a brutality that exists within this cabin, but also like the cabin seemingly is alive. It's so well described. It is a character within this book, and he does a great job of placing you there. He does a great job of making you feel as though you are also in the midst of all of this activity and trying to figure out what is going on. And so I think like any book that does that is worthy of being read. Any book that can genuinely transport you somewhere else and really make you like weigh the decisions of fictional people and really make you like examine the lives of fictional individuals is worth reading. At least, even if you don't find the narrative compelling, there is such an element to the craft of this book that if that is something you enjoy, if you enjoy good writing, if you enjoy just feeling like you are truly in the hands of someone in control of their craft, this is a book that you should be reading. That's really all I want to say, because I think saying more starts to reveal too much. And I think, besides that basic premise, this is kind of a book that you should go into like without knowing a whole lot of the outcome, without knowing a whole lot of the discussion surrounding the book. If you are interested in a truly deep dive of this, the video is coming. I've filmed it. It's coming. It'll be out once I can edit an hour's worth of footage. But I think that alone should tell you that there's something here. Or maybe I'm a crazy person and I found all these things that aren't actually there. But I think that there's so much to unpack, so much to deal with, so much to wrestle with, so many questions to ask that you won't get answers to, that'll force you to make a choice one way or the other. That is why you should read Cabin at the End of the World. It is a home invasion story that is just completely deconstructed and turned into something else. It is still thrilling and gripping, and Paul Tremblay has a way of, when it feels like things should be wrapping up, he introduces a new element to the story that kind of spins it in a different direction. He finds a way to keep the narrative moving, but also like compelling. The narrative is never stagnant, and he always is like finding new, interesting, and inventive ways to like keep them contained into one house, but move the story forward in a way that's not just people talking, in a way that's not just, you know, like a lot of single location stories seem to have this problem where like there's arbitrary reasons that come up that like force them to stay where they are. And I mean, it's just kind of part of the genre. It's just kind of something you have to wrestle with and deal with, and you either accept their reasonings or you kind of get pulled out. And I think here he comes up with like very compelling things that keep them in this one location, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, I can go along with that. Yeah, okay, like I can buy that. And I think like there's so many just interesting twists and turns, and there's so much to weigh, and there's so much to pull and extract, that I think this is a book that doesn't necessarily require multiple readings. You certainly can get a lot out of it that first time through, but I think like to really, if it grabs you the way it grabbed me, I would really recommend reading it a second time and pulling like so much more out of it that second time around. But that is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Check it out. I think you should read it. Let me know if you do pick it up and read it, or if you have read it. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. We can continue the discussion there. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, thank you for watching. Keep reading good books.